Rayna is a UX designer and researcher at Nuna. And at Nuna, she's working on making healthcare affordable and accessible for everyone. So I'm so excited to learn more, Rayna. Welcome.
Thank you.
And do you have slides?
I do. Let me go ahead and share that. So thank you again, Amy, for that introduction. Like you mentioned, my name is Rayna, and I'm a UX designer and researcher at Nuna, a healthcare data analytics startup. And I'm super excited to be presenting to all of you today on designing for the new world of value-based reimbursements. So at Nuna, we are super ambitious and we want to make high quality healthcare affordable and accessible for everyone. We achieve this by enabling health plans to successfully transition their provider contracts from fee-for-service to value-based reimbursements. So why value-based care? In the US, we pay more for healthcare than any comparable country with far worse outcomes. I mean, Amy, you just mentioned we're number one in cost, but number 17 in outcomes. And the current system is inarguably broken. It's both unaffordable and unsustainable, in part because of how we pay for these services. Many payers are now prioritizing what they call the new world of value-based care, shifting their resources to the creation and servicing of value-based agreements. So to oversimplify the differences between fee-for-service, or the old world, and value-based payment, in fee-for-service, healthcare providers pay for procedures, which incentivizes volume of care regardless of health outcome of the patient. And in value-based reimbursement, they pay for outcomes, which rewards effective management of patient and population health. By providing a suite of data analytics products that enables both sides to navigate the complexities of these new value-based reimbursement programs, we enable healthcare providers, I use providers to refer to healthcare systems and et cetera, to give better, more affordable care to all their patients. And today I'll be talking to you about insights from our research and design on one of our newest product offerings for contracting, Contract Modeler. I'm talking to you about this because transitioning from fee-for-service to value-based payment is super hard. This is relatively new for a lot of people on both sides, and both sides are still figuring this out. And so Contract Modeler aims to solve pain points for some of the greatest barriers along the road to adopting and operationalizing value-based reimbursement programs, which is, how do you even get into one in the first place? So I love this quote from a plan user because it really clearly articulates one of the main challenges of contracting, specifically between payers and providers, where the differences are even more. One's revenue is another one's payout. So before we could design anything, we had to thoroughly understand the users and the stakeholders involved. We talked to and collaborated with data specialists, network managers, business leaders, financial leaders, actuaries, and contract negotiators on the plan and provider side, as well as our internal subject matter experts, to thoroughly understand the problem space and receive iterative feedback on designs, insights from which I'm sharing today. So to start off, from a process point of view, the old world was more of a numbers game. The majority of these contracts were purely fee-for-service, which meant there was lower complexity, limited number of stakeholders needed, and a greater certainty of financial outcomes. A dramatization of an old world, or current world for most, contracting conversation might go a little bit like this. I need a 5% increase based on my rising costs. How about 3%? Great, done. In the old world, health systems could plan on increasing their budget from year to year and had a better view of what they could expect in terms of contract performance. However, in the new world of value contracting, this involves a lot of complex models, hard to digest data, multiple cross-functional subject matter experts, which is a sharp departure from the status quo. The way the new reimbursements are structured is complex, and plans need to carefully explain how different scenarios could work, assuring providers that it will all be okay, hopefully. So a dramatization of a new world contracting conversation might go a little bit like this. You might not get a raise this year. Wait, what? You might even lose money. You can already see how this would be a really tough sell for a healthcare system. providers have a lot of doubt about entering into value-based agreements. There's a lot more on the line for them. And although both health systems and health plans are motivated to reach a common understanding of the risks and the benefits, the relationship between the two has historically been contentious, and the road to alignment and trust is long and challenging. Getting to the point where folks feel comfortable can take months, so understanding the pain points along the process were key to making sure we were designing the right thing before we could focus on designing the thing right. Today, I'll be going through what a typical process might look like for a larger ACO or a group of doctors in hospitals. And so this process changes based off of the size of the provider or provider system. At a high level, contract negotiations for value-based programs involve multiple deep dives to get stakeholders aligned so that they can trust that they can be successful. So in the initial approach, traditional contracts follow a cyclical renewal rhythm. So the timing of the contracting conversation, as well as relative power dynamics, is important at initiation. These conversations are usually initiated by an ending contract or a request for a fee increase. Next, there is a kickoff. During a kickoff phase, providers gain an understanding of the value-based program at a high level. Here, they seek to understand scope, timing, and the amount of risk that they would be expected to take on, if at all, and when. There's no normal when it comes to value contracting. New high-level understanding and explanation is almost always needed for all stakeholders. Following a high-level kickoff, deep dives on attribution, financial model, quality, and reporting give stakeholders the opportunity to better understand the complexities of a new contract and help build confidence in future success. Deep dives can happen as many times as needed to as many stakeholders as needed until the discussion either progresses to a signed contract or a decision is made. Data issues here can cause significant friction and lack of trust at this point in the process. So, just going into the four main types of deep dives. Attribution of patients to providers in the system determines the scope of the contract and the terms of success. Alignment and understanding is key because, after all, the health system doesn't want to be responsible for the poor care of patients they didn't even know they were responsible for in the first place. However, every plan has a different view of what providers are in the system and different ways of calculating attribution, resulting in different counts for attribution. Providers need to be confident in the model, to trust its outputs in order to decide if they can be successful in the contract. However, it's challenging to understand potential performance without proper level of financial breakdowns, and there is often no sense of relativity of the financial projections to fee-for-service. A quality deep dive is an opportunity for the provider to align their contracts with their own clinical strategy. Here, providers need to understand if they can improve those measures and how. And finally, in terms of deep dives, providers want to know what they can expect in terms of reporting and if it will be useful, actionable, and help them be successful in execution. So as you can see, by the time you get to the signed contract, you've spent a lot of time and resources. However, future iteration can sometimes occur even after the contract is signed. And after a signed contract, upstream issues in the value contracting process can lead to major pain points when operationalizing, such as custom agreements or unplanned work that actually unplanned but contractually agreed upon work. So these new challenges require new tools, specifically around model understanding and data transparency. One of the key pain points of the new world is the complexity of these models. Revenue is now the result of multiple factors. This creates new uncertainty around performance and financial success, and a need for greater transparency and understanding. Healthcare data is notoriously messy. And even listening to Jamie's talk, there were so many, that was really interesting seeing about the differences from a global perspective. But data sharing and accuracy and digestibility are some of the biggest sources of friction and misalignment in contracting conversations, with bad data making it hard for providers to ask the right questions to understand if they can be successful. And this further erodes trust. So furthermore, although plans may want to be transparent, sharing information in a way providers can easily understand is challenging. Confidence and trust in their ability to be financially successful is one of the greatest drivers of moving forward with new arrangements. However, current processes make it slow to build a shared understanding of these risks and benefits. Because of the complexities of the new contract, it's much harder to build a shared understanding around the path to success for both the plan and the provider. Furthermore, multiple diverse stakeholders and subject matter experts are needed to parse through the details of the model to understand the financial impact of various parameters and reach alignment on the successful contract for both parties. However, a health system's primary responsibility is to provide care for their patients. Even some of the most sophisticated systems may not have all the proper internal resources and skill sets needed to understand, digest, and process contracting outputs. And again, getting to the point where both sides can feel comfortable in financial success can take months, even when contracting is successful. With Contract Modeler, we help plans and providers get on the same page and model potential contract performance so that both sides can feel confident about moving forward. It reduces the painful back and forth by directly allowing providers and plans to model their potential performance in terms that they are most familiar with. We allow plans to input contract parameters and guardrails, as well as ingest all of their claims data. And based on this, we enable both sides to review their baseline fee-for-service performance, as well as their baseline performance in the new contract. This baseline makes it clear to everyone which members and providers are involved and the comparable financial order of magnitude. In the past, conversations have stalled on confusion around these two facts alone. Next, we enable both sides to visualize their risk and opportunities. As a neutral third party, one of the most interesting design problems to solve for was how to accurately represent this. The benefits and opportunities of a value contract, for example, are much easier and clearer to illustrate during a COVID year where the value model remains relatively consistent, whereas the fee-for-service is heavily impacted by the use or lack thereof of services. We then surface areas where change can be made to impact financial payout. For example, maybe this is a contract with a small independent practice. They definitely don't have actuaries on staff, but they might know that they're expecting to grow their practice. This can have a huge impact on their payout. And with the modeler, they can explore and clearly see a projection of what that could look like. And finally, a key element of value-based reimbursement is incentivizing higher quality care. We enable providers to review proposed quality measures and model their potential performance based on their understanding of their population and future initiatives. For example, they might choose to stretch and reach their target for breast cancer screenings, knowing this will give them a significant boost in incentive payments. In the end, the tool provides transparency and clarity to a process that has historically been dense and complex, allowing both sides to successfully reach alignment and build trust in future success. This helps smooth the transition towards a more affordable and high-value future. And that's it from me. I welcome any questions.
This is fantastic, Rayna. Thanks so much. You are a researcher and UX designer, but now you're also a contracts expert. And and you really brought it to life and made it interesting. So thank you. And it is essential, right? As we move from fee for service to value-based care, we all sort of know, common sense. It should be value-based care. Somebody shouldn't have to pay multiple times for services that they may or may not need, that may or may not be moving in the direction of their improved health. And there are statistics like a third back surgeons admit that a third of surgeries might be unnecessary. So we know there's a lot of waste in the system, and we also look at prevention and how do we monetize prevention. So value-based care really is where it's at. And so it seems like you've really built a system that can help move organizations in this very important direction. So I'm just curious, you did help design this platform. What was your research process and any kind of big epiphanies or shock and awe that you experienced along the way as you sort of peeled back the onion on this very complex and wicked problem?
Sure. Let me stop sharing so that, yeah, so one of the good things is that, so this was obviously a team effort. The different components of the platform are worked on by like my amazing colleagues. And for me, starting with contracting, which is what I focus on, that was really building off of the understanding of payments. So like, this is what payment switches, this is what happens once you get into the actual agreement. And so when starting at the upstream, like contracting, we started with generative research. And so we did about from November of 2019 to February of 2020, before everything shut down, and we were able to go and be with people in person and really talk to them and really understand like what their pain points were. And so that was really important to us to understand like what happens here, like what are the issues. So they were like moderated, like semi-structured interviews. And we also, some of the things that were helpful for us, like as we went through the various stages of understanding, so this is what the process looks like, because it's kind of a black box. This is what the process looks like. And then really validating with both sides, like both insurance people and provider people. This is what happens. This is what I struggle with personally. And then one of the activities that really brought forth a lot of insights, I think, is we did this radar exercise, which I had never done before, but I was like, I think that this will get what we need, where we asked people to map. So like when you're in these different phases, so for example, like the deep dives, like what are you most, like what are you focused on? What's most important to you? Because there's so much happening, so much complexity, and we really want to be able to prioritize and focus on what's most important for folks. And so that helped. And then as we moved forward into design, there was a lot of sort of iterative work with our internal stakeholders, and we have lots of really great folks who are subject matter experts and actuaries and like quality people who we can work with and partner with, and really make sure that we're hitting the right points.
I actually have a life goal, #nerd alert, of collaborating with actuaries. So kudos to you for actually doing that.
Very great.
Right? I'm curious too about co-creation in this space. So we had a challenge where we were designing the conversations between patients and providers about pain assessment conversations. And it's area where, a patient is in pain, they need, medication to manage that pain. The clinician is worrying about, overprescribing and all the measures that are coming. And so it was a pretty interesting area, but we wanted to get them together to have conversations live as a research sort of activity. I wonder if you were able to get insurers and systems or folks from both sides in a room to sort of do some game storming, or did you do that? Did you think of that? What do you think of that?
I think that's an amazing idea. And I'm actually working on I might steal that idea for the problem that I'm working on now. But I think in the phase that we were in last year and sort of working on building this and shaping this, we didn't have that opportunity to get both folks in the room. So we had to understand folks separately. And then that's sort of where that cross-validation was really helpful to be like, this is what we're hearing that your process is like and what happens. And like, this is what the plan thinks that the pain points are. Do you agree with this? Sort of like, what are your pain points? And sort of we need to get both sides of the puzzle and really see like where the similarities and differences fall apart.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It might be interesting to do, but I think when you were telling your story, I'm like, okay, this is definitely UX, but it's also service design. It's also relationship design. I mean, you're basically designing a negotiation, a relationship, a kind of these win-win scenarios. What was your view on, is this UX, is this service design? Did you think about that? How did you think about that?
Yeah, I think that the overall flow of contracting, so our contracting pillar, like that's definitely, like there are many different workflows that we're building out. And it's definitely, like you said, it's both service, it's UX, it's relationships. And one of the most interesting things that I learned was that although like when you're a plan and you're a provider, it's like, it's a really hard relationship, but people really fall back on those relationships. Like the data is bad, but it's like, but I've been working with this person for 20 years and I trust them. And so it was really interesting to see like behind these like two divisions, like they're just people.
Right.
And so, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's totally helpful. You know, it's interesting, you know, as we work with, you know, insurers, for example, you know, people don't always understand their insurance or like their insurance company, but everybody we work with at the insurance companies we've worked with, they're all very nice people. So it's like if you can get the right people in the room, we can figure a lot of things out. So we have a question from Allison, and she's curious if you have any insight into how transitioning to value-based payment contracts impacts how providers interact with patients. And this sort of aligns with the question I was going to ask about population health management, and if you're doing any sort of predictive analytics in that way as well. But do you have any tips on supporting providers in that transition?
Yeah, and so that is actually something that is covered in our third pillar, which is care. These are all named in this way. And so population health and sort of like that like aspect of like providers being able to see their members and being able to track sort of like how different folks are performing, like where are the open gaps, like what are the things that they need to focus on from like a quality perspective. That's definitely something that at Nuna we also focus on as well.
Yeah, it's so important. And it's like even when a company, an organization is both, like if they were a health system and they added an insurance and they're integrated now, or they were insurance and now they're doing agreements with health systems, it's still a struggle to sort of really become integrated and then tie to, again, like how can, you know, what can we expect from interventions and from what population health management can do from an ROI perspective, right? And to track those things. I think it sort of goes back to Dustin's talk yesterday too, about how do we measure the efficacy so that others can predict, you know, the success and the financial return they're going to see on these investments.
Yeah, that's so important to be able to see how these things are working from a financial perspective.
Awesome. Rayna, this was fantastic. I could talk to you all day, but thank you so much for joining us.